And I know that many of you could not make the journey to come to Washington, D.C. It was not easy. It's a weekday. We do understand it. But with us today, we have some outstanding speakers who we are fortunate that we're able to make this trip today. And I had the great pleasure of listening to a tremendous speaker yesterday. Connie Reguli, Esquire, is an attorney from Middle Tennessee who has done a lot of work to advocate on the behalf, to truly advocate on the behalf of the people who entrust her with their lives, their children, and their futures. I was very, very impressed to see an attorney that was able to really make tremendous sacrifices in her life to do what was important for the people that she cared for. A true credit to your profession. And she exemplifies the type of attorney that we all strive to have represent us. So please show your support, spread her message, and share her on Facebook. Ms. Connie Reguli, Esquire of Middle Tennessee, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you very much. And first of all, we're here in this beautiful, beautiful city, Washington, D.C. This is our nation's capital. Yesterday morning, I was walking to the event, and I walked past the building, and the sign on it was Internal Revenue Service. And it's one of those big, beautiful granite buildings. And scrolled across the top of that building were etched the words that taxes are what we pay for a civilized society. Oliver Wendell Holmes. What has happened today, and particularly of my interest, are we back on?
We're back on.
We're having a windy day here today, which helps because the sun is streaming bright. So what makes this a particular interest to me is because I see tax dollars spent every day in the destruction of families. I have been an attorney for over 20 years, and I will tell you that with all of the people that I hear say, if we only had a few good attorneys, the system would be different. I'm here to tell you from my professional standpoint that that is not the case. We have a system that is so embedded with problems that attorneys who want to save families, who want to help families, who want to minimize the devastating impact of divorce, that we are unable to do so. It's a crime of my profession. It is something I'm so sad about, and yet every day I still try to go forward and do that for families. I often encourage my families in divorce cases to make sure that you remember the children. The children are like small sponges, and they're taking everything around them in their environment every day. You know, I tell them as they sit in my office, I say, it's really hard to take yourself back to being a 5-year-old. You know, you are in a world where you understand the world, you understand the government, you understand manufacturing and finances and society. I said, but the 5-year-old lives in their own little mind, and they live in a mind that knows their house, they know their mommy, they know their daddy, they know their school teacher, and maybe their Sunday school teacher. But they live in a very, very small world. And everything that they become in their life is a result of what you feed into that environment. Divorce is devastating. Children do not need to be victims of divorce. And let me talk to you as well about child welfare system, because my heart has taken me into helping families and defending families who fight in the child welfare system. After I learned that Title IV-E funding was an unlimited federal funding system upon which the states become financially dependent on, I began to understand why children were being fed into the foster care system like raw materials into a factory. The children became the commodity of the child welfare industry. Here's what I mean by that. You can look for yourself. If you don't know this, if you don't see this problem, if you don't understand it, there's a website that you can go to, and it's called kidscount.org. KidsCount.org collects statistics from all over the country, and you can go to your state, and it has statistics on everything about children. It has how many children are ages 3 to 5, how many 5 to 8, how many in elementary school, how many are from divorce. And as you scroll down that page, you can get to the statistics in your state for the number of children entering foster care and the number of children exiting foster care every single year. And it will even go further. It will let you run a 5-year history of those statistics. And when you run those statistics, you will see in every single state of this union that the foster care levels are either consistent or they rise. There are some states that are particularly bad. I'm in Tennessee. In Tennessee, we run 7,000 to 8,000 children through the foster care system every year. You can look at, for instance, Florida. Florida runs about 14,000 children through the foster care system every year. And Arizona, a state about the same size of Tennessee in population, runs 17,000 children through the foster care system every year. To me, that is a quota. That is the number of children that they have to keep in the system to keep the machine running. A lot of people do not understand that the foster care system is a private industrial complex just like our military. It is private foster care companies, it is private counseling services, it is private reunification programs, private drug testing, private drug assessments, private drug rehabilitation services, all of them feeding off the money of those children being in the system. And if you've ever sat with a parent, and I challenge every one of you, if you're not involved with the system, to become an advocate for parents. Because when I wrote the Tennessee commissioner of the Department of Children's Services, and I says, I have a family here that they can't afford me to be with them 24/7. They can't afford for me to be with them at every single meeting that you call upon them to be at. I want somebody in the department to serve as a family advocate. They wrote me back a letter and they said, I'm sorry, we don't have anybody who can fill that position. So then the department ombudsman said, would you like for me to be a family advocate? And I says, I absolutely would. And you need to come at these meetings and you need to see what's going on. I got him to come to meetings. I explained to him what was going on. I wrote him emails. I got him in contact. He wrote a report for me. And you know what? His report said the agency was doing a terrible job and they weren't being considerate of this family and this family's needs and had held these children in foster care too long. Guess what? Within the next 30 days, I got an email from him, and he said that he had been asked to remove himself from that role in the case because of a potential conflict of interest. So there is absolutely nobody who takes that role to advocate for the families. So if you want to learn how to do something and help something, people need to stretch out there and they need to be an advocate for families and help families through this system. As far as a lawyer and an attorney, I do what I can and I represent people, I educate people, I help people understand that there are constitutional issues that are not being brought to the attention of the courts. We have United States Supreme Court decisions that say that there is a right to parent that is protected under the 14th Amendment, and yet those rights are stripped every day. And let me go back to Oliver Wendell Holmes, because I want to tell you that our American society has a terrible history and a terrible reputation against humanity. Of course, we all know the story of slavery, and we think how noble we were to abolish slavery in 1864 at the end of the Civil War. But there are things that are worse than that. For instance, we had orphan trains in the United States. And from 1850 to 1920, they went around New York City, government agents did, and they picked up children off the streets of New York City, and they put them on trains and shipped them to the Midwest and stood them on the train stations so people could go by and pick out the children that they would have to help them farm. From about 1870 until again about 1910, 1920, our American government went to Indian reservations and picked up children off the Indian reservations and sent them to boarding schools in the East, cut their hair and told them they could no longer speak the native language because they wanted them to be civilized. Our government has a terrible reputation. Oliver Wendell Holmes was a Supreme Court Justice of the United States Supreme Court. He not only had engraved a famous statement on top of the IRS building that taxes are what we pay for a civilized society. Let me tell you what else he did. He wrote the opinion in Bell v. Buck in about 1927. And let me tell you what that opinion says. That opinion says that it is okay and it is allowed for a court to order a mentally retarded person to be sterilized. And in this opinion, he says 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. We have treated people very poorly. If you don't fit within fit within the bell curve of acceptability in the United States, you are outside the norm. And I got to tell you, I am not a Democrat. With all that I've said here today, I am red through and through. I am a Republican. I was born a Republican in the great state of Indiana. I believe in limited government, but I also believe that the citizens of this country owe the less fortunate help and owe them the benefit and to share the privileges of their life. And there is a way to do that. There is a way to make that happen. Also, during that same period in the 1920s, that is when opinion came out of the Supreme Court that said a child with cerebral palsy could not go to a public school because it was too grotesque. Our laws have changed. The laws have changed. The laws for parental rights have been established in the Supreme Courts. And since then, those opinions came out in the 70s. And since then, there has been a deterioration. And there has been a deterioration because our tax dollars, those tax dollars that we pay for a civilized society, have been used against us. Those tax dollars have been used to tear our families apart. Title IV defunding is the most atrocious thing I have ever seen. It is atrocious. Atrocious. It's horrible. And I believe children need to be supported and they need help and they need financial support. But there are several things about that program that just pellet me. And you know, I went back and I read the legislative history in that. And the legislative history is you have people in the House of Representatives standing up and saying, well, you know, we've got to take care of these deadbeat dads. That's what they were saying in Congress. Deadbeat dads, that's what they called them. And so they believe that they could take care of the deadbeat dads by creating their own guidelines, of the guidelines of what a person should pay, of making a determination for the government to make a determination of what a parent who is separated from the other parent should pay to that parent for the support of that child. That's outrageous.
Absolutely.
That is just outrageous.
No power to do that.
Outrageous. There is no power, there is no authority to do that. When the child support guidelines first came out, I was an attorney, and I thought, how'd they come up with these numbers? And so I did some research, and of course, apparently the government put together a study of what households spent based on income, of what percentage of their income they spent on the children in their home. Now, these studies were in about 1968. Okay, so things have changed since 1968, first of all, and the average household income was lower. And so even if those studies were legit, even if it was legit, we are not living in the same place we were today as we were then. Our economic and our family economies are fluid. They are ever changing. Let me tell you though, you know, it isn't just the guidelines. When I went to law school, I learned about evidence. Okay, evidence is the facts of the case, right? The evidence is what you put before the case to create facts, and once you have those facts established, then the judge is to apply the law, and those are called the conclusions of law. So, let me tell you about false facts, especially in child support. We have this thing in child support called a presumptive income. A presumptive income.
Yeah.
If parties are separated, it can be husband or wife. I mean, I've seen both of it, so it goes both ways. But if a parent becomes unemployed after a divorce for a variety of reasons, the court will still order, well, you should be making that income. You should be making that income. And so therefore, we're going to order that you pay child support on the income that you should be making, whether you're making it or not. Ridiculous. Absolutely no basis in facts. No facts, okay? Nor is somebody required to bring facts to the court as to why they should be able to go out and get that job. So let's talk about, first of all, the presumptive income because you're out of work. Let's go a step further and say, well, you are working. And while you were married, you were, it could be anything. It could even be a lawyer. Because the lawyer is nothing but a high-paid hourly employee who has a lot of expenses they have to pay out the back end. Let's say you're a lawyer and the stress of the divorce has caused your practice to drop 35% during the course of the divorce. And then you go to divorce court and they say, well, you know what? 2 years ago you made $200,000 and I'm so sorry that you're only making $40,000 this year, but you have the ability to make $200,000. And so therefore we're going to order your child support based on $200,000. Total fraudulent. Totally fraudulent. What I have heard as I've been here today, which I'm still blinking my eyes because I can't believe it, is that parents have had their rights terminated and they're still ordered to pay child support when their parental rights have been terminated. Let me tell you another thing about child support that is just absolutely horrendous. Horrendous. Parents have their children stolen and put into DCS custody, and the first thing DCS says is that if you don't pay child support to the state, that we're going to terminate your parental rights. And you know what? It's only a 4-month period of time in Tennessee. 4 months. How many people have been in between job situations where they lose their job for 4 months? People who work day to day and on an hourly basis and are just struggling to make it through, there are times when they have a 4-month period where they can barely pay their rent and have a place to live. 4 months. If you don't pay the state for keeping your child, we're going to terminate your parental rights. That should be absolutely abolished. There should never should the state be allowed to terminate parental rights on failure to pay support.
Absolutely.
You know, and the whole thing of termination of parental rights, let me tell you what derogation of common law means. Common law came from England, right? The kings over there owned the property and they created courts and they created what they call common law. Common law has two elements. It has a civil side and it has a criminal side. So the criminal side is if I steal your shoes or I steal your money or I steal your horse or your donkey or your wagon, right? You can take me to criminal court and you can have me incarcerated. The civil side means that you take me to another court and you can get a dollar amount, right? So you can get a dollar amount for damages. And of course, the burden of proof is different. I've always thought, like, why is the burden of proof different, right? The same thing as you're trying to prove a certain sort of facts, right? Should be the same. But you can be incarcerated. That's called common law. You come over to America, and so we have a constitution and we have common law has been adopted by our courts. But then we have laws created by our legislatures every year that are
statutes, right?
Statutes. Those statutes can be in derogation of common law. You need to remember that, derogation of common law. That means that it's totally created by legislators and that it has to be, that is the only relief is what is created by the legislators. And so you have termination of parental rights. And termination of parental rights has nothing to do with common law. It has nothing to do with common law. Birth certificates were created by the state to be able to do an accounting of a census, basically, of who lives in where you live and who's responsible for this particular person. So the birth certificate was created by the state. The same thing with the marriage license. Now, I'm very conservative and I upset a lot of people when I talk about this, but the whole gay marriage thing is just really a diversion, right? Because a state marriage certificate, all that is the state's ability to control your money. Right? You get a divorce, they can control your money. So it doesn't really matter to me who has a marriage certificate. Because if you get married, and you get married under the eyes of God, you don't need a marriage certificate for it.
Three-party contract.
Yeah. So let me get back to why we have a termination of parental rights. So we have a termination of parental rights is because we created a birth certificate in the first place. So we have a birth certificate and then we're going to terminate those rights under the birth certificate. Very interesting. So we have a child who's born to two parents by a biological concept. We have a child who receives a name by those two parents, which is biblical, right? We've done that since the beginning of time. And what the state can do, now get this concept here, what the government can do is the government can remove that status for the child, remove that child's entire identity, and replace it with what they want it to be. The state in our country, in the United States of America, has the ability to remove your identity and give you a new one. They can give you a new identity. They can give you a new name, first, last, and middle. They can give you a new parent. They can give you a new father, give you a new mother. The state has that control. And I want you to just think about that for a minute, because that is really, if we weren't living in it, this isn't something that we were experiencing on a day-to-day basis, and that concept, somebody just walked up to the street to tell me and I never knew about it, I would say that's like futuristic. That's like the government having control of everything that we do, everything that we live within. That is an aberration. It is an aberration. Now, the problem also is that in the middle of that, the child has no rights. Under the United States Supreme Court, it's already been decided that the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution is a right of privacy. And in that right of privacy, it includes the right to familial integrity. It includes family rights. That is not just parental rights. It is not just parental rights. And I want to say this for Senator Lindsey Graham, because Senator Lindsey Graham has an amendment out for parental rights. The constitutional right to family integrity is not just parental rights. It is the right of that child. Until we have a constitutional amendment that says that there is a right to family integrity for every man, woman, and child, we will get nowhere. Man, woman, and child. That's for you, Senator Lindsey Graham. Somebody send that to him, because he has right now this parental rights amendment. I don't know who's pushed it, who's gotten it out there. He tried it once before, it didn't go through, but it has to include family integrity. So as we stand here today, this is September 2018, and we have to date everything now because with YouTube and Facebook, and I always try to lose sight of time and when did somebody post this and when did somebody say that. We do tend to lose track of when things are being said and what people are doing. So I'm going to tell you today, it is September 2018, and we have a duty. We have a duty as American citizens. We have been sleeping on our rights. We have to be vocal. We have to be heard. We have to be heard. Social media, the internet, YouTube, the most wonderful invention in the world, because people spend more time watching YouTube than they do cable TV.
Yeah, let's hope so.
So with you, pass, share, deliver these messages to everybody you know. Get this word out there so that people will bring this to the attention of the press. I have gotten stories put on the press. I'll tell you a couple short ones. I had a father who was divorced. He had 3 kids. Wife had main custody. He was visiting his kids, had a good relationship. He got a call one day from DCS. DCS says, if you don't come and get your kids right now, we're putting them in foster care. He was 2 hours away. He dropped everything, went and he picked up his kids. He brought his kids to his home. He had to get a bigger home. He was already married, had another child, and so he did everything they said. Everything they said. 6 months later, he walked into a courtroom, never got an attorney because he did everything they said. He walked into that courtroom. 6 months later, the judge says, if you don't take a drug test for me right now, your kids are going in foster care. And he says, but I've never been accused of using drugs. Judge says, you heard what I said. He goes, Your Honor, I'm not going to take your drug screen. I'll take a drug screen tomorrow morning, first time I can, but I'm not going to take yours. He says, your kids are going in foster care. He called me up. I'm going to make this story short, but I had the kids back within 45 days. In 45 days. All right, so my message to you is 2018 is coming up. I think I said this was September 2018, didn't I? It's September 2017. I'm living in the future. It's September 2017. 2018, we have multiple elections coming up. In every state that you live in, you need to go out and find out who your gubernatorial candidate's in, because the people who are governors are the people who pick the people who run the state agencies. Okay, they run the child welfare agencies. They run the child support agencies. You've got to get the right people in there to run these agencies, and you've got to have a governor who's got the guts to do it, because the budget depends on these federal dollars, and they've got to have somebody who's willing to stand up and say, you know what, Governor, we're not going to get as much money from the feds this year because we're going to do it right. So you need to go out, find out who's running for governor, and you need to confront them with these issues, and you need to get the platform down and get it going so we can start making a change this year. Thank you.
Thank you. For those of you out there, as Connie Reguli was describing, please share on whatever social media platform that you prefer, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, to get the word out. Today, I had the opportunity to listen to you for the first time, and I truly am impressed, and from the heart would like to say to thank you for being a credit to the profession and for speaking out for the people. I really want people to recognize the type of sacrifice that Connie takes upon herself by speaking out against the system will definitely not make her very popular in her profession and certainly in Middle Tennessee. So really, thank you for having the bravery to do that.
Let me say, I don't hold any offices with the Bar Association because of that, I promise you.
Exactly. So we really have to give our love and support to individuals like Connie who really stand for the people. Connie's the type of attorney that I grew up and believed in, and I believe that what this country is founded on, and that attorneys that are out there to protect the laws, to protect the people. And again, to thank her, and as a pediatrician, I call out for my colleagues to take a stand in this battle, for fellow pediatricians, fellow physicians, to stand up and stand against any type of fear you may have for the court, because we're fighting for children. And again, this is what Connie's doing as a credit to her profession, and I call upon other attorneys, other physicians to come out and fight for children.